Nick Gant had never forgotten his father's words. One day, a girl would give him a flower, and when that happened, he had to help her. It wasn't just for her, it was for everyone like them. His father had a gift, the power to move objects with his mind. But that power made them targets. A secretive group called Division hunted people like them, forcing them to run. Now, in a small hotel room, the chase was coming to an end. His father knew they were closing in. He warned Nick to be careful. Some of their enemies possessed the ability to see the future. Then, as the door burst open, his father hurled Nick into another room with a flick of his hand, hiding him just in time. Nick hit the floor and pressed himself against the wall. Through a crack in the doorway, he saw the man leading the raid, Henry Carver. With a single motion, Carver sent his agents forward. Gunfire erupted. Bodies crashed against walls. And then, silence. Carver stepped out, calm and composed. He gave a single order. Take the body. Nick didn't move. He didn't breathe. His father was gone. All he could do was watch as Carver disappeared into the night, taking everything with him. 10 years later, inside a sterile facility, Carver watched as Kira Hudson lay unconscious in a bed. A doctor readied an injection, a drug designed to amplify her powers. The risk was high. It could enhance her abilities or kill her instantly. Elsewhere in the building, a small glass marble rolled across the floor, unnoticed. The needle plunged into Kira's arm. Almost immediately, her body seized. Her heartbeat flatlined. A doctor leaned in, his hand reaching toward her still form. Then her eyes snapped open. In a flash, she struck. The doctor collapsed before he could react. She ripped the security pass from his pocket, grabbed a syringe from a nearby tray, and bolted. An alarm blared. Metal doors slammed shut, sealing the exits. But the marble kept rolling. Just as the final door was about to lock, it wedged itself in place, jamming the mechanism. Kira slipped through and disappeared into the night. Carver remained still, unfazed. Without turning, he ordered his right-hand man, Victor, to activate the sniffers. Across the world, in the neon-lit streets of Hong Kong, Nick Gant sat alone in his cramped apartment. He hovered 2 dice in the air, testing his power. He flicked his wrist. One landed right, the other didn't. Later, at a street dice game, he tried again, this time with money on the line. He failed. The dealer wasn't amused. Nick owed $6,000, and when he couldn't pay, fists replaced words. Beaten and bleeding, he ran. He barely made it home. But the moment he stepped inside, 2 division operatives were waiting. They wanted information about a girl who had stolen something valuable. Nick played dumb. After a quick scan of his apartment, they decided he was of no use. Before leaving, they reminded him that running was a waste of time. As soon as they were gone, Nick grabbed a bag and his gun. He wasn't waiting around for another visit. But before he could leave, his phone rang. A voice told him to open the door and put the gun down. He hesitated, then obeyed. A 13-year-old girl pushed past him like she belonged there. She went straight to his fridge and pulled out a container of chicken. She had seen it in a vision. Her name was Cassie. She was a watcher, someone who could glimpse the future. She got straight to the point. There was $6 million out there, waiting to be found. And the key to finding it? A girl on the run from Division. Nick wanted nothing to do with it. He had spent years staying under Division's radar, and he wasn't about to change that. Not even for $6 million. But Cassie only smirked. She had seen what was coming, and no matter what Nick thought, he was already part of it. Cassie insisted that disaster was coming if they didn't find the girl and the suitcase. Then she froze. A vision hit. People were after her in the market. They ran. The chase led them straight into the Pop family, a ruthless gang. The Pop father stepped forward, claiming his daughter had already foreseen Nick meeting the girl. The Pop daughter raised a gun at Cassie, smugly stating she knew exactly how she would die. Cassie didn't flinch. If this wasn't the moment, there was nothing to fear. Without hesitation, she hurled Nick's gun at her. Nick took the opening. A surge of telekinetic force sent the Pop father and his henchmen slamming into the wall. He grabbed Cassie, and they ran. Then came the bleeders. Their piercing screams shattered every piece of glass around them. A sonic blast shattered the streets into chaos. Pop girls saw a vision. Nick and Cassie running toward the massive fish tanks. She directed the bleeders to cut them off. The plan worked. As the sonic blasts ruptured the aquariums, water flooded the floor. Cassie and Nick slipped, struggling to regain control. Nick yelled for Cassie to run as another scream blasted through the air. Pop Girl had another vision. This time, she saw Nick alongside Kira and Cassie, but Kira eventually vanished. If they killed Nick now, they would lose the girl. She turned to her father. This wasn't the time to finish him. Meanwhile, at the pier, Kira woke up on a boat, disoriented. Inside the cabin, she spotted a mirror. Someone had scrawled 4,100 in Nick in lipstick. Instinctively, she grabbed her own lipstick and traced the letters. The handwriting matched. Her mind raced. That night, Cassie searched the city, her visions leading her to Nick. He was in the care of a stitch named Teresa, a healer who only helped because she owed Cassie's mother a favor. Once healed, Nick took a moment to catch his breath. Cassie handed him a lotus flower. Division had locked up her mother and was too powerful for them to control. She pulled out a drawing. A woman taken by Division agents. The agents who had been in Nick's apartment earlier were closing in on the girl with the suitcase. Another drawing followed. This one showed their dead bodies. Cassie met Nick's eyes. If they went after her, they would both die. The vision was already unfolding. Agents Mac and Holden had Kira in custody. On their way to the airport, they stopped at a cafe, giving her a chance to use the restroom. Inside the stall, Kira focused. As a pusher, she could implant memories. She whispered a new reality into Mac's mind. His partner, Holden, had killed his brother. The illusion took hold. Mac stormed out, gun drawn, and shot Holden in the back. Then, clarity struck. The memory wasn't real. Panicked, Mac rushed back to the restroom, but Kira was waiting. She threw soap in his eyes, but Mac caught her. A struggle ensued. Her bracelet beads scattered across the floor as she clawed at his head. She grabbed a bathroom sign and swung. A final kick to the skull sent him crashing. She grabbed his keys, his gun, and without looking back, she disappeared. As the taxi moved through the city, Nick practiced his telekinetic abilities, lifting Cassie's sketch pad into the air. His eyes landed on a drawing of a cocktail glass with a small round object beside it. Assuming it was an olive, he told the driver to head to Club B. Cassie corrected him, pointing out that it was actually a bead. Nick suggested tracking it down, hoping it would lead them to the missing suitcase. Meanwhile, Mac handed Kira's beads to Carver, insisting that he still remembered everything about the brother Kira had made him believe existed. Carver, unmoved, reminded him that the memory was fake. Without hesitation, Carver ordered Mac to go home, dismissing him from duty. But Mac refused, vowing never to let Kira push false memories into his mind again. Carver remained indifferent, giving him a choice: either bet his life or walk away. With a subtle nudge of his abilities, Carver planted a final illusion, convincing Mac that his gun had been emptied earlier. Without hesitation, Mac put the weapon in his mouth and pulled the trigger. Carver and Victor stepped over his lifeless body without a second glance, already focused on the next step. At Club B, Nick and Cassie found Hook Waters, a shifter capable of altering objects. They needed a bead to trick a tracker, so Hook transformed an earring into an identical replica. He directed them to Emily, a powerful sniff, to help them locate the suitcase. Arriving at Emily's place, they showed her Hook's fake bead, but she already had one of the real ones. With a quick touch, she closed her eyes, following its trace. When she opened them again, she told them where to go: Koontong Pier. At the pier, Kira tried using her powers to manipulate a couple into giving her a ride, but before she could get in the car, she heard footsteps. Turning, she spotted Nick and Cassie approaching. Instinct took over. She raised her gun and fired. Nick dodged and called out to her, recognizing her immediately. She was the woman Division had been hunting, but instead of relief, Kira was furious. She accused Nick of abandoning her when Division took her. He, in turn, believed she had left him, assuming she had simply stopped returning his calls. As they moved through the streets, Kira explained that Division was after the suitcase, but she had no idea what was inside. She couldn't even remember what had happened in the past few days. Nick realized someone had wiped her memories to make it harder for Division to track her. But her memories of him, those were still intact. Cassie pulled Nick aside. Her visions had shifted again. Now, her mother was with them in the moment she had foreseen their deaths. That meant the future was changing, and not for the better. She insisted that Kira was making things worse. Without the suitcase, she was just a liability. But Nick refused to abandon her, convinced that they would find the case with her. Cassie disagreed. If Kira was caught, they would all be dragged down with her. Nick made a decision. If they were going to keep Kira safe, they needed a shadow, someone who could block the sniffers and keep Division off their trail. That night, Nick and Cassie met with a shadow named Pinky Stein. He demanded $10,000 a day for his services, guaranteeing that as long as Kira stayed within 20 feet of him, no sniff could track her. They checked into a rundown motel, waiting for Kira to remember where the suitcase was. Cassie, restless, stepped outside to get food. Sensing that Nick and Kira needed privacy, Pinky left as well. Inside the dimly lit room, silence stretched between them. Kira suddenly pushed Nick's mind, making him believe the bathroom was on fire. When he realized what she was doing, he shut the door behind them. Outside, Cassie wandered the streets when Pop Girl appeared from the shadows. She reminded Cassie that she had already seen how she would die. Then, she flipped through her sketchbook, revealing repeated drawings of Tiger. There was still time to change her fate if she left Hong Kong. When Cassie returned, Her face was pale. She told Nick that Kira was going to get them all killed, including Pinky. Pinky, overhearing, reminded them that Watchers could still track them down. It was only a matter of time. Nick decided to split the group. He told Kira to go with Pinky, promising to find her soon. Cassie, drained, passed out after drinking. Later that night, Pop Girl and the Bleeders stormed the motel room, but it was empty. Nick wasted no time. He calls Emily, the sniffer they met earlier, using her abilities to track down Carver through one the beads division had distributed. He found him at a restaurant, sitting across from Victor. Without hesitation, Nick used his powers to levitate a gun, pointing it at both men. Carver remained calm, mocking him. He claimed his Watchers had already foreseen Nick's death. Then, with a smirk, he delivered another warning. Kira didn't have long to live. Without another injection, she would die, and only Division could provide it. Nick's control over the gun wavered. Victor, a mover like him, seized the opportunity, using his ability to wrestle the gun from Adair. Before Victor could fire, Nick flipped the table, pinning him against the wall. Gunfire erupted. Nick slid across the floor, shooting at Victor, but every bullet was blocked with ease. Both men manipulated their weapons, shifting them in midair. Nick sent a gun floating toward Victor, just as another gun crept toward him. But when Nick reached for it, empty chamber. Victor didn't hesitate. He struck Nick hard, knocking him down with a brutal hit to the head. Then, using his powers, he hurled Nick across the room, slamming him into the walls and ceiling. Outside, Carver found Cassie, who was drawing in her sketchbook. She pleaded with him not to make her do anything to herself, but Carver barely paid attention. He wasn't interested in harming her. He liked the future exactly as it was. Cassie warned him that if Victor killed Nick, the future would change. That made Carver pause. Without another word, he turned and walked back inside the restaurant to stop Victor. Back at the motel, Nick watched as Kira grew weaker. Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale. Lying beside her, he asked about the suitcase. She revealed its secret, a psychic steroid that could amplify abilities. Division wanted her back because she was the only one who had survived the injection. Before Nick could process the information, Cassie entered, holding a sketch of herself with Kira's shoe. As she inspected it, she found a key hidden inside. The discovery came just in time. Kira's condition worsened, forcing them to rush to Emily's place for answers. Kira warned them that Pop Girl would soon figure out their every move, reading their intentions before they even acted. That meant they needed a plan that not even they knew in advance. Emily discovered that the locker tied to the key was being shadowed. Cassie realized that if she couldn't draw the object inside, it had to be hidden on a larger scale. She sketched again and uncovered something unexpected. The entire building was being cloaked from Watchers. Meanwhile, Pop Girl sought help from Teresa, sensing that something was shifting in the future. Nick was growing tired of seeing death in Cassie's visions. Division and the Pop family were always one step ahead, tracking their every move. To change the game, they had to make the future unpredictable. Nick devised a plan. He would write instructions for everyone, but they could only read them at the right moment. To ensure even he wouldn't know the full plan, he asked Pinky to track down the man who wiped Kira's memory. Once Nick had written the final letter, to himself, he gave Kira a red envelope, telling her to open it if she ever doubted the truth. Then, he sent her with Pinky and distributed the remaining envelopes to Cassie, Emily, and Hook. As Pinky delivered Kira to Carver, he opened his own envelope. The instructions led him back to Nick, where he revealed the location of Wuchang, the memory wiper. Without hesitation, Nick paid Wuchang to erase the last 2 hours from his mind, ensuring he would forget about writing the letters. Before the process began, he left a final envelope behind for himself. At exactly 7:35, the group opened their letters. Hook infiltrated the shadowed building, posing as a safety inspector. His letter led him to locker 4100. As he unlocked it, an elderly woman fired at him, but he remained calm. He assured her that Kira had sent him and that her job of cloaking the building was no longer necessary. With that, he retrieved the suitcase and returned to the motel. Using his abilities, he altered another suitcase to match the color of the real one. Meanwhile, Cassie arrived at Nick's apartment, leaving behind the suitcase and placing his guns within reach. When Nick woke up from the memory wipe, he found the final letter directing him home. Upon arrival, he barely had time to react. Teresa was waiting. She overpowered him and stole the suitcase. As she checked the contents, she handed it over to the Pop leaders. One of them prepared to use his deadly scream, but Teresa stopped him, savoring the moment. Their sister had promised that Nick would die slowly. Nick, weakened but not defeated, saw the guns Cassie had hidden. With a flick of his hand, he telekinetically aimed them at Teresa. He had one demand: she was going to heal him. Pop Father took the suitcase, his fingers closing around the syringe inside. But the moment he handed it to their client, the object shimmered and transformed. What should have been a powerful drug was nothing more than a bottle of soy sauce. Confusion rippled through the room as Pop Girl quickly reassured her brothers. The real syringe was somewhere else, hidden inside a building. Meanwhile, across the city, Carver stood over Kira, holding a syringe filled with an immunosuppressant that could save her life. Her body was weakening, but she resisted, her instincts rejecting the injection. Carver remained calm, insisting they weren't trying to harm her. He revealed the truth. She wasn't a victim. She was a division agent who had volunteered for the experiment. To prove it, Carver pulled out an ID card, her photo staring back at her from Division's database. He explained that the only reason she had been able to evade them was because of her training. Kira's mind rebelled against the claim, but Carver pressed his fingers to her temple, his ability unraveling buried memories. Cassie, still haunted by the vision of her own death, felt the weight of inevitability closing in. Nick, determined to change fate, gave her a simple but crucial instruction: walk without thinking about the destination. If she didn't know where she was going, then neither would the Watchers. Cassie followed his advice, stepping into the subway and moving forward without direction. When she reached an intersection, she closed her eyes, spun in place, then kept walking, unaware that Pop Girl was tracking her every movement. Cassie eventually found herself in the attic of a Chinese restaurant. Stacks of boxes surrounded her, each marked with a tiger logo. She glanced down at her own drawing, a chilling image of herself being attacked by a tiger. Before she could process the meaning, Pop Girl stepped into the attic, gun raised, her voice sharp with frustration. She had been made to look like a fool in front of her family, and now she wanted revenge. Before she could pull the trigger, a shadow shifted behind her. Wu Chang emerged from the darkness, his fingers brushing against Pop Girl's temple. Instantly, her expression went blank. Her memory was gone. As Cassie exhaled, Wu Chang's voice was quiet but firm. Meanwhile, Nick had no choice but to confront Carver directly. He called and offered a deal, the drug in exchange for Kira. When he arrived at the meeting point, he saw her standing there, alive and healthy. But something was wrong. Her eyes held no warmth, no recognition. She asked for the suitcase, her voice distant. She reminded Nick of the first time he told her he loved her. But then, she said it never happened. That memory, like so many others, had been planted. She claimed they had met for the first time just the day before. Nick pushed back, remembering every detail, running cons with her at Coney Island, their time together. But Kira shook her head. He had never been there. Before he could react, his phone buzzed. It was Hook. His voice was urgent. Nick needed to take the drug himself. Then, Hook instructed him to hand the phone to Carver. Whatever Hook had to say, it was enough to force Carver's hand. If he wanted the suitcase, he would have to let both Kira and Nick live. Victor and Carver arrive at the suitcase's location, dragging Nick and Kira along. As soon as they retrieve it, Victor knocks Nick unconscious and locks him in the trunk. Before they can leave, the Pop family ambushes them with armed men. Victor hurls sacks of colored powder, disorienting the attackers and shielding Carver's escape. Amid the chaos, Victor tosses two men off the rooftop, one crashing into Carver's car and breaking the trunk. Nick seizes the chance and escapes. Armed with two guns, Nick rushes toward the lockers. Kira, pursued by Pop family goons, manipulates them into turning against each other. When Nick calls her name, the men reflexively aim their weapons at him. Victor intercepts, sending Nick sprawling down the stairs before engaging him in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Blocking gunfire mid-fight, Victor gains the upper hand until Nick knocks him down. A bleeder arrives, unleashing a deadly scream, but Victor silences him with a bamboo stake to the throat. Enraged, Pop Father retaliates, killing Victor with a sonic blast. As Nick staggers, blood trickling from his ears, he topples scaffolding on a Pop Father. Carver watches Kira control a group of men, impressed by her enhanced abilities. He orders her to march them off the roof, but Nick intervenes, realizing Carver is manipulating her. When Nick tries to stop him, Carver forces Nick to leap from the rooftop. At the last moment, Nick grabs the syringe from Carver and injects himself. Carver warns it will kill him, but Nick collapses before he can respond. Later, Cassie finds Nick unconscious and revives him. She retrieves the real suitcase from a hidden bin, revealing Division will do anything to keep the drug from falling into the wrong hands. She hesitates, unsure if she should trade it for her mother. When Nick asks what he injected, she smirks, revealing it was just 9 Dragon soy sauce. Aboard a plane to Division HQ, Kira discovers an envelope Nick left for her. Inside, a photo of them at Coney Island and a note, "Kill Carver." As he sleeps beside her, Kira whispers an order. Carver wakes, places a gun in his mouth, and pulls the trigger.